I always imagined my final breath would be met with silence, maybe tears, certainly not laughter. But there she was, my niece, Charlotte, laughing. Not hysterically, no, just a twisted little chuckle like someone who'd won a long, bitter game. And I, bedridden body eaten by ALS lungs, rasping fingers barely twitching, could only stare back helpless. She leaned over, whispering with saccharine venom, "Looks like it's finally over, Uncle Paul." But it wasn't, not quite. Because the shaking in my fingers was not random. It was writing. I had written something hours earlier, something that would make her laughter catch in her throat. "My name is Paul Whitaker. I'm 71 years old. Once a professor, then a full-time guardian after tragedy struck my sister and her husband in a car crash. Charlotte was 5. I took her in, never hesitating. She was my world until she made it clear I was merely a stepping stone to hers. ALS hit me like a thief in the night. First the slurred speech, then trembling hands, then the slow betrayal of my body. Charlotte cared at first. She really did. Or she was good at pretending. And I clung to that illusion far too long. She moved into my house 6 months ago to take care of me. I signed over power of attorney. Foolish, perhaps, but I thought, what choice did I have? My body was vanishing one breath at a time, and Charlotte was family. She cooked, cleaned, managed my medicine, answered calls. But something in her eyes changed the day she found out how much I'd saved. Millions, quiet investments, retirement, a few rare paintings, enough to tempt the devil. The first sign, the locked drawer in my study. It had been jimmied open. Then my accountant's number disappeared from my contact list. Then came the argument with Nurse Helen, the only other person who visited regularly. And then one day, Helen stopped coming. Charlotte claimed Helen had taken a job abroad, but she couldn't fake the tension. And Helen's bracelet, how odd that it reappeared on Charlotte's nightstand. I may have been dying, but I wasn't senile. That night alone, I used every trembling muscle to scrawl a few lines on my old notepad, with a pen clenched between my teeth. I left it where I knew Charlotte would dismiss it, a meaningless scribble, but it held my last message. It held a key. And today, as I took what she thought was my final breath, her grin bloomed. She thought it was over, that everything, my home, my money, my silence, was hers. I stared at her one last time and let the machines flatten into a tone. She turned away, victorious. But it wasn't over. She didn't see the nurse watching from the camera I had installed 2 weeks ago, or the notepad that the lawyer would soon receive. "No, Charlotte, it's not over." Charlotte was a beautiful child. Curly auburn hair, big eyes like her mother's, and a laugh that used to light up the darkest room. When my sister died, I held her tiny hand in mine and swore to raise her like my own. For years, that promise was my anchor. I missed tenure at the university to be there for every parent-teacher conference, every fever, every heartbreak. I never remarried, never had children of my own. Charlotte was my family. She called me Unc until she turned 15 and decided Uncle Paul sounded more grown up. I thought it was maturity. In hindsight, it was distance. The kind of distance people put between themselves and what they plan to discard. Still, I paid for her private high school, for the piano lessons she gave up after 2 months, for college twice. Her first degree in communications, the second in marketing. When she dropped both careers to focus on wellness influencing, I kept smiling. I even hired a video editor for her YouTube channel. I remember the first time she posted a video about me. Caring for my sick uncle, a day in my life. It went viral. She made me wave from the bed. I smiled. I didn't know then she was monetizing my illness. When my muscles started to betray me, I begged her not to show my face online anymore. She pouted, then agreed. I should have seen it for what it was, the beginning of withdrawal. Emotional, then physical. She'd still spoon-feed me dinner, but the warmth was gone. She was waiting, watching, measuring how much longer I had. And when Helen came along, my nurse, my one friend Charlotte hated her. I suspect it wasn't because of the way Helen spoke to me or cared for me, but because Helen asked questions. She kept records. Noticed missed medications, bruises on my arms from helping hands that gripped too tight. I remember the fight. It happened on a Tuesday. Helen arrived late, rushed and shaken. I could hear shouting from the kitchen. "He's not your cash cow," Helen snapped. That was the last time I saw her. When I asked, Charlotte smiled too quickly and said Helen had taken a better job, better pay, overseas. She said it like I was a child asking why the dog ran away. But I kept notes, scribbled what I could, dates, times, things I saw, things I felt. The day I realized she'd sold the Degas sketch from the study, that was when the last sliver of denial broke. That sketch was worth over $80,000. She claimed it had been misplaced in a cleaning accident. I knew better, so I called my lawyer, left a voicemail that only he and I knew the code to access. And I wrote, God, I wrote with what strength I had left. A confession, a clue, a trigger. Let her laugh. She has no idea what I've done. I asked Charlotte for my notepad the day before I died. You want to doodle, Unc? She mocked, but brought it anyway. She never looked at what I wrote. She assumed my twisted, weakening hands could only produce gibberish. But I'd trained myself for weeks to move just enough to write legibly, if slowly. Each stroke cost me agony, but I managed 4 lines. Helen knew. Password Whitaker 1973. Lawyer open Thursday 3 p.m. Trust not broken yet. It wasn't a poem, it was a weapon. Charlotte saw it after I died. She picked it up, smirked, and tossed it back onto the nightstand, like a child bored with a toy. But my lawyer Thomas would take it seriously. He knew what to look for. We had agreed on it after Helen went missing. I had insisted he keep everything locked behind a secure server until he received confirmation of my death and that handwritten note. Charlotte had changed my will. She thought I didn't know. What she didn't realize was that I had changed it back through Thomas just a week earlier. My voice was nearly gone, but Thomas had sent a specialist. Eye-tracking software let me blink select every clause, every beneficiary. And I left Charlotte nothing. The house would go to charity, the paintings to the museum, the account split between the hospice that helped me and a trust in Helen's name. Unless Helen was dead. That's what scared me most in those last days. Not dying, but not knowing. Charlotte never admitted what happened. But she wore Helen's bracelet. I recognized it instantly. I had even written it down. And that video, dear God, that was my masterpiece. A week before I stopped being able to speak, I had a tech come in and help me set up a remote recording system. The cameras were small, well hidden. 2 in the living room, 1 in the kitchen, 1 above my bed. They caught everything. Every time Charlotte pretended to cry on camera. Every time she hissed at me off screen. Every time she crushed pills that weren't meant to be crushed. And the day Helen tried to call the police. The day Charlotte locked the door and screamed at her. The camera above my bed caught it all. And that footage was what the password unlocked. Thomas knew to release it to the press if anything ever happened to Helen or me. As Charlotte's fingers curled around my notepad and she crumpled it with a sneer, I smiled behind the mask. Just a flutter at the edge of my lips. I wasn't scared anymore. The paperwork was already in motion. Charlotte thought she'd won, that I died with nothing left to say. But my words weren't spoken. They were written, and they were already out there waiting to scream. The morning after my passing, Charlotte was radiant. She wore black, of course, tasteful, modern influencer appropriate. Her morning selfie was uploaded by 700 a.m., captioned with a single tear emoji and goodbye, Unc. You were my hero. She played the grieving niece perfectly. Flowers, ash scattering live stream, dramatic piano music in the background. Donations rolled in for her mental health recovery. She was a marketing genius, except she'd never learned the power of truth. 3 days later, everything began to crack. Thomas called her. Calm, formal, firm. I received a document from your uncle. A posthumous instruction. There's a clause in his legal will that we need to execute immediately. It refers to an encrypted file tied to a handwritten note. He mentioned you might have seen it. Charlotte paused. Yeah, I saw some scribbles. It didn't make sense. Thomas was prepared for this. He always was. Well, it made sense to me. Charlotte hesitated. Wait, why do you sound like you're accusing me? There's a video, Miss Whitaker. I suggest you come to the office, 3 p.m., Thursday. She didn't show. Instead, she tried to access the house security system. She failed. She tried to access my bank. The password had changed. She called my financial advisor and screamed into his voicemail. By Thursday morning, the first leak had gone live. Dying man's hidden camera reveals niece's abuse. A clip. Only 30 seconds long, but it hit like a bomb. In it, Charlotte is seen holding my spoon above my head just out of reach, saying, "Dance for it, Uncle Paul. Smile for the camera, you useless fossil." And I try to smile. The backlash was instant. Thousands of comments flooded her page. Sponsors pulled out. Her YouTube channel vanished overnight. She went live the next day, eyes red, no filter. "It was taken out of context," she whispered. "He was smiling. He told me to record him. It was our thing." But then came the next clip. Helen. Crying. Screaming, "I'm calling the police," and Charlotte shoving her against the kitchen wall. A bottle smashes. The screen cuts out. I don't know what happened after that, but that silence, the way Helen vanished, it had always haunted me. Until now, the video forced an investigation. Helen's sister came forward. She had received one final voicemail. "I'm scared. Paul's in danger. I think Charlotte's poisoning him." That was the trigger. Police reopened the case, subpoenas, search warrants. Charlotte's face was everywhere, America's most toxic niece. And me, I was finally free. In death, I spoke louder than in life. My body failed me, but my mind, it planned everything. Let Charlotte burn under the weight of her own lies. She lit the match herself. I just made sure the world was watching. Charlotte didn't crumble publicly, not at first. She doubled down, hired a PR firm, posted videos of herself crying in candlelight, draped in my old sweater, whispering about healing and media abuse. But truth is a tide you can't stop with hashtags. When the police searched my home, they found it all. The crushed pills in the bathroom trash. The bottles of medication with broken seals. My financial records, some handwritten, others saved by Thomas, showed $420,000 missing in 6 months. All wired to Charlotte's crypto wallet under a fake name, Wellness Queen 88. Then came the journal. Charlotte thought it was just more scribbles, but it was indexed dates, incidents, patterns. Some lines written with teeth, some with the tip of a stylus strapped to my wrist. Every page was agony, but it gave them what they needed. Helen's disappearance became a homicide investigation. They drained the old koi pond out back. They found her phone. Inside the case, still wrapped in a thin plastic bag, was a recording. Helen had known something was wrong. She recorded their final fight. The video's poor quality didn't hide her words. "You touched his IV again. You're cutting his dose. What are you trying to do?" Charlotte's reply. "If he dies, everything's mine, and you're not ruining that." Silence, then a thud, then static. It was enough. Charlotte was arrested at her gym. She was doing yoga in a class called Rise and Detox. They cuffed her in front of her followers. I didn't get to see it, but I imagined it often, how her face must have frozen, how her breath must have hitched when they read her the charges. Murder, elder abuse, fraud, attempted euthanasia. Her trial was a media frenzy. Every news outlet labeled her the smiling butcher. Old clips of her fake sobbing over my hospital bed went viral now, with captions like "Oscar-winning performance" and "How to grieve a man you tried to kill." In the courtroom, Thomas read my last letter. I'd asked him to. It ended with a single line. "If you're watching this, Charlotte, remember I gave you everything, and you tried to take even more." She cried in court, but for herself. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to life with no possibility of parole. I wish I could have watched the moment they led her away. Not out of vengeance, but closure. To prove that sometimes the truth does survive the lies, I never raised my voice, never hit her, never cursed her. But I wrote, and writing saved me. Even in death, it was my hand that delivered justice. She mocked my final breath, but she never saw the storm it carried. The last time Charlotte saw me was in a grainy courtroom video played during her sentencing. I was pale, gaunt, little more than a shadow propped by pillows, but my eyes were steady. The clip had been recorded 2 weeks before my passing. My voice was gone, but the subtitles told my truth. To the one I raised as my own, if you're hearing this, I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because I won't carry you into whatever comes next. Charlotte sobbed, but it didn't matter. The gavel came down like thunder. I was buried quietly. No live stream, no hashtags, just Thomas Helen's sister and 2 hospice nurses who actually cared. They played my favorite jazz piece, Bill Evans' Soft and Bittersweet. I had asked not for flowers, but for donations to a care facility for elderly patients without family. I left nothing for Charlotte except the weight of her own actions, and I made sure that weight would grow heavier with time. Weeks after her sentencing, a foundation in Helen's name was announced, the Whitaker Helen Trust for Nursing Integrity, funded entirely from assets reclaimed from Charlotte's accounts. Her influencer money now helped the very people she once hurt. A full circle ending, but endings aren't always peace. I sometimes wonder what she dreams about in that concrete cell. Whether she still hears my mechanical breaths. Whether the image of me blinking slowly at her unmoving, unreadable plays in her mind. Most of all, I wonder if she reads the letters. Yes, I wrote more. One every day in my final month, all addressed to her. Some were memories: her first birthday, our beach trip, the night I stayed up holding her when she had a fever. Others were cold clinical records of bruises, withdrawals, bank statements, missed doses. The final one. A single sentence. You became everything I protected you from. Thomas mails her 1 letter each year on the anniversary of my death. Some say it's cruel. I say it's truth. Let it simmer. Let it teach. My life ended in that hospital bed, but it didn't vanish. It echoed. It mattered. Because I fought not with fists or fury, but with words. And words, when true, never really die. I hope Charlotte finds something human inside those walls. But if not, then let my breath be the last one she ever mocks. If my story reaches you, take this as both a warning and a plea. We all want to believe the ones we love will love us back, especially those we raise, those we sacrifice for. But kindness without boundaries becomes fuel for betrayal. I ignored the signs, excused the slips, and clung to the past when the present was screaming for me to act. Don't wait until your hands can no longer hold a pen to protect yourself. Speak when your voice is strong. Prepare when your mind is clear. And above all, don't confuse love with obligation. Evil doesn't always arrive in the form of strangers. It can wear familiar smiles and share your blood. If you suspect darkness in someone close, don't hope it will fade. Shine a light. My final breath carried more than air. It carried truth. May yours never have to do the same.